So, less than 1 week before the midterm elections, Americans are starting to feel inundated with all this negative news. In just the last week alone, authorities arrested a Florida man accused of sending pipe bombs to high-profile Democrats just 1 day before gunmen opened fire inside a Pittsburgh synagogue.
In our 24-hour news cycle, Americans are having difficulty avoiding the constant negative headlines. So Dr. Daniel Bober is a psychiatrist and a former mental health policy fellow in the U.S. Senate through the American Psychiatric Association. And he joins us now from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. Listen, you know, Vlad and I have to be here every day. I mean, we don't have to, but we're being paid to be here every day. But I think, Vlad, I mean, there are times that I go through the news, especially sort of that first section of the news, and I think, oh, why would anybody want to watch this? This is so, and you use the word depressing. You're not really depressed, but
I'd argue
you know,
that
it's the kind of stuff that brings you down.
It does.
And you wonder if it has a lasting effect. So let me start off by asking you, this repeated exposure to news that can be, you know, kind of upsetting, what sort of impact can it have on someone's mental health?
Well, you know, Anne-Marie, 30 or 40 years ago, you know, when you saw something bad in the newspaper, you could just put the newspaper down. But as you said, because of the 24-hour news cycle and weaponized social media, it's in your face all the time. You can't get away from it. And normally the part of the brain that controls stress is like an on and off switch. When you go through a stressful situation, your brain goes back to the off position. But when you're chronically inundated with stressful situations, it changes your body in a way at the level of your genes where that on switch is on all the time, and it can have very, very nasty effects on your health. It can raise your risk of heart disease, of cancer, and ultimately a premature death from all the chronic stress.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that that's the, you know, even for us, Anne-Marie, you pointed out that we're paid to be here, but a lot of us we grew up loving the news and we were news junkies, and now I feel myself sometimes wanting to disconnect completely once I leave the office or once I'm not on assignment. The question that I have, you talked about how it can affect individuals, but how does it affect the relationships that we have with others?
Well, you know, I'm seeing this in my office every day now. Families are not sitting at the dinner table together. Friends are not talking to each other. And this has a very chilling effect on our ability to interact with each other. And it really affects our overall health. And so before, you know, it wasn't such a big deal. But now with the polarization and the divisiveness, it really is affecting us on an everyday level.
And what about the effects on our physical health? You know, it's one thing to say mental health, but, you know, cortisol is supposed to be the stress hormone, right, doctor? If you have these sort of high levels of cortisol all the time or for long periods of time, does it have an impact on your physical body?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a question of depression and anxiety, but it's things like heart disease and cancer because the cortisol affects your immune system and it increases inflammation. And chronic inflammation is the precursor to many, many serious diseases that can end your life decades early.
Is this a new phenomenon, doctor, or is it something that really is within the last 10 or 15 years? And I kind of want to believe that it follows the advent of the 24-hour news cycle, primarily through cable news.
I totally believe that. I think it's a relatively new phenomenon because the effect is magnified exponentially because of the 24-hour news cycle and because of social media. And if you look at the way people are getting their news now online and the fact that it is 24 hours a day, I think the level of stress is much more toxic than it was because it's, you know, 24 hours a day now.
Okay, so now I feel like what we've just done is added one more negative story to our list of negative stories because we're telling everybody, you know, if you keep watching us, this is going to be terrible for your health.
I don't want people to become stressed out from this story.
No. So please, doctor, guide us through this. I mean, people want to stay informed, especially with an election coming up. I mean, you want the facts. You need this information. So how do you stay informed without
killing yourself?
Well, like I said at the top of the hour, how do you keep it? I can't remember what I said, but how do you stop the news from bringing you down? How do you keep up with the news without having the news bring you down?
By limiting your exposure and frequency, by being able to digitally unplug and do things like mindfulness exercises, breathing, yoga, going to the gym, spending time with your family, getting close to nature, and being able to take yourself away from it, and maybe reducing the amount of time. And, you know, if you want to check in on say a few-day interval, that's fine. But exposure all the time is damaging to your health.
Yeah, all things in moderation, right?
That's right.
That's
so
what
you're
every good
saying
doctor
don't
says.
bring your smartphone to the gym and scream at it while you're sitting on the weight machine. That's a bad thing to do.
Have you seen somebody do
That's
that?
absolutely true.
I'm just saying that, like, you see people, like, you
Damn.
know, when you're at the gym, he recommended going to the gym, and, you know, people are on the gym reading the news, you know, and they're
Right.
supposed to be there
True.
to de-stress. So.
It's so true.
That's true. Our smartphones have become an appendage. It's ridiculous.
Yes,
That is
Doctor.
so true, Doctor.
Very true. Dr. Daniel Bober, thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate
Thanks,
that. That was
Vlad
great.
and Anne-Marie. Appreciate it.